It's just not true. Yeah. But there's an atmosphere that gets created. See, that's MLM selling. It's a very relevant kind of selling. God was giving me experience in all these different kinds of businesses. And then I got my opportunity to get into the thing I've always wanted to do, play with computers and program. Well, these were all my freelance things. Time came when I was eventually charging people per hour for the programs that I was writing. Well, this is a whole lot better than selling a bottle of detergent for $10 and making $2 or $3 out of it. Now I was charging them $50 an hour and writing programs that took 8-10 hours. That was a whole lot better. I went up a notch. But you know what? I still had to find people to sell to. And that's the problem with freelancing. Freelancing is great, but the problem in freelancing is you've got to be the director, you've got to be the admin clerk, you've got to be the sales rep, you've got to be the product manager, you've got to be everything. And it's a great exposure and experience at a lower level. But at the end of the day, I couldn't care how much you're charging per hour. There are only 24 hours in a day. And some of those hours you have to spend sleeping. Some of them you have to spend eating. Some of them you have to spend in the bathroom. And some of them you just have to spend resting, doing nothing, socializing, traveling to work. By the time you add up the number of hours you got left, even if you can put in an 18-hour day, which is really pushing it. If you're charging $100 an hour, that gives you $1,800 a day. Now, that might be a pretty good income, but you'll never become a millionaire that way. You'll never rise up to that higher level to be God's entrepreneur if you just remain as a freelancer. So I had my time as a freelancer, but you've got to move a bit higher now. You've got to be a business owner. You've got to expand and get people working with you and under you. And so I stepped out to start my own computer business. Not only were we going to offer programming, but we would sell the materials, we would sell computers, we would sell the accessories, we would sell everything related to computer. And then we would write our programs and resell the program. We were moving to a whole new level. I could bring other people in to work with me. It was awesome to have that liberty and freedom to say, I've got a computer business and it's got a name. And suddenly there's all the paperwork that goes with it. There's having to rent an office that goes with it. New expenses. And if you're employing somebody else to try and make enough money to pay them also, it's a whole new ballpark. Now, I couldn't have jumped from casual employee to business owner, could I? See, I had to work my way through the ranks. And so exposure to each level is absolutely necessary before you're ready. And so I had my computer business, and we kind of made it through by the skin of our teeth. Just enough money to pay the rent, just enough money for the food. It was wonderful to be my own boss. But if I didn't work 18 hours a day, we didn't eat. You know, when you're working for a boss, you go home at going home time and watch TV all night and do whatever you like. Then come back to work at starting time in the morning. You don't lie awake at night wondering whether your boss is going to have enough money to pay you your salary. It's his problem, not yours. Well, you kind of learned a little bit of that when you went into the freelancer side, but now it takes on a whole new dimension. Now you're lying awake at night wondering where you're going to get the money to pay the people that are under you. Where you're going to get enough money to pay the rent for the business. You carrying that load and that care. It takes a while before you're ready to face that. And you need to be in that experience to feel the pressure that comes on you. If you've never been there, you cannot rise up and lead others, and you cannot be the kind of leader that God's called you to be, to rise up and to get the wealth of this world to come in, to supply the body of Christ, and to change the world, and to get the church ready for the coming of the bridegroom. And that's the ultimate call, isn't it, for God's entrepreneur, as I showed you in Signs of the Business Calling. Well, the Lord delivered me from the computer business and brought me overseas to where I could then start doing another kind of business I'd never ever done before. And we set up an online training school. That was awesome. The different people involved, starting with a small team and eventually growing bigger and bigger to where we had lectures that were handling it. We set up an online bookshop where we could start producing our own books and sell those books and tapes and DVDs and CDs and all sorts of things on the internet. We moved up to a whole new level. These were all the different kinds of jobs that God took me through before He could bring me to that place where He said, okay, now you step fully into the place that I've called you to be as my entrepreneur to the nations and to the body of Christ. Now, you may not have gone through that many different varied jobs, but if you look at your experience, if God has called you to this kind of calling, I'll guarantee that as you look at your work history and the experiences that you've had along the way, there's been a varied exposure that has dealt with certain things in you, has prepared you to rise up and be trained. Because remember, the preparation is not the training. The preparation is to make you ready to be trained. We'll deal with training again in a separate teaching altogether. We're looking only at the preparation now to become an entrepreneur. God will prepare you in all different kinds of business. Now, I've shared a bit of already where I've been. I'm going to go back over it again from a different viewpoint now, and I'm going to show you the different kinds of business. I'll tell you why, because God prepares His apostle to function in different kinds of ministry. And we've seen that the apostle will function in evangelistic, pastoral teaching, and prophetic ministry before he or she can rise up and take that office of the apostle. Well, before you can take the office of entrepreneur in God's economy, you'll need to go through different kinds of business that are actually very closely related to those ministries of evangelist, pastor, teacher, and prophet. And so as I look back again on some of the exposure that I had, I could see why I had such varied jobs, opportunities, such varied exposures to different kinds of work in order to prepare me to function in each of these different entrepreneurial types. Now, the evangelistic entrepreneur is involved in selling and setting up a business. Just like the evangelist is involved in selling the gospel and starting churches. Well, my little exposure to MLM was my first look at what's involved in setting up a business. That was not really a business, but they call it your own business. The whole idea is you find a couple of people to work under you and you introduce them. And the moment you do that, you moved a level higher, and you then receive commissions from their selling. They, in turn, bring other people in, which makes them move higher, which pushes you higher still. You get this pyramid structure. But in the end, everybody under you in your pyramid is part of your business. And even though you're selling somebody else's product, it's your business. You are earning the commission from all those different sales. And so MLM was my first exposure to what it would be like to start from nowhere and begin to build up a business structure. Then life assurance was my next exposure. In life assurance, again, it is your own business. Some of the people that I worked with were making so much money, they were hiring their own secretary to contact their customers, to set up appointments. They were hiring different people. And even though they were offered an office by the company, they were setting up their own equipment and computer management system with their secretary and staff, or whoever they wanted to hire. They were running their own business. It was good exposure for me to see how I could think now as a person who owns his own business, where I am responsible for my business. And let's face it, if you don't sell, you don't have a business. And if evangelist doesn't preach the gospel, he can't start churches. I was exposed to situations where selling was the key to building your business. And as you sold effectively, you begin to bring together a structure which would become a business environment. And then the Lord threw me into something that was totally out of my league. Totally out of my league. I ended up being able to get a job only with a company that sold waterproofing for roofs. Christian man who was prepared to offer me a job. And it was a golden opportunity for me. I had no choice but to take it. But here I was. I had a lot of experience in a lot of things. But buildings and waterproofing was not one of them. You know, I was what they call a pen pusher in those days. And I was really good with my pen. I was really good at writing. I was even good at speaking. But climbing on roofs and waterproofing them against leakage from rain was not one of my specialties. I knew nothing about it. But I needed exposure to all different realms of business. And I needed to learn to get in there with a very short bit of training to climb on a roof and pretend I knew what I was really doing. And convince a customer to spend a lot of money to put an expensive waterproofing system on his roof. It was a new kind of selling that I'd never done before. But I realized that you need to be able to sell to any different kind of person. I was getting exposure to a more varied type of markets. And if you are to rise up and be God's entrepreneur, you should, like the apostle, be able to do anything. So you should be able to get involved in any kind of business. You say, well, you know, my specialty is this engineering business, or it's this particular type of product and business, and that's what I'm really good at. Well, if God's called you to be his entrepreneur, get ready for change. He's going to stick you in something you know nothing about. It's part of your preparation. And when this all goes wrong, when the business you've been doing suddenly falls apart, and you're forced now to go and do something that you've never done before, that you don't feel very confident in, don't sit and moan and groan and say, oh, the devil's really just destroyed my work. No, God is preparing you for a higher calling. Well, I don't like selling. If you want to be God's entrepreneur, you better know how to be the evangelistic entrepreneur, because it's the foundation and the key to all business. You say, well, I'll employ other people to do the selling. How will you know if they're doing it right? Unless you've been there. How would you know what problems they face unless you've been there? It's part of your preparation. You cannot avoid it. Well, then I had to learn to be the pastoral entrepreneur. And that was great. My first job in computers actually wasn't a programming job at all. My job was that when the company sold a computer, I had to go in afterwards and teach people how to use the computer. There was a package of free software that came with every computer that they bought, and my job was to go afterwards to visit them and teach them how to use the software and to handle all the problems that they had. And you see the pastoral thing? Caring for people, helping people. And my next job after that was the same, just went to a higher level. Programming and customer support. It was wonderful. It was wonderful to be the nice guy. To walk into a company, this whole big office of women sitting on their computers, and you walk in the door, they say, there he is, Les, we're so glad you're here. Please, we have problems. Please come and help us. It felt so good to walk in there and to sort their problems out for them. Oh, I tell you what, they loved me. Oh, maybe they didn't love me. They loved who I was and what I was doing. But that was okay. See, I had the pastoral heart. I wanted to help people. I loved helping people. I thrived on it. They'd invite me to their Christmas parties because they loved me so much.